Some people seem to make every morning brighter. They show up with a smile, lift our spirits, and make the world feel a little lighter. Kelly Ripa has been one of those people for decades. A familiar face full of humor, warmth, and energy. But behind that bright presence, few knew the silent battle she was fighting when the cameras stopped rolling. It's easy to forget that even the most radiant people often carry the heaviest burdens. For years, Kelly brought laughter and light into millions of homes. Yet, off-screen, she faced something laughter alone couldn't fix. A diagnosis that changed everything. When Kelly finally revealed her truth, that she had been diagnosed with cancer, it wasn't only her world that shifted. Her husband, Mark Consuelos, the man who had stood beside her through every triumph and trial, was deeply shaken, and his raw, emotional reaction on live television stunned millions of people around the world. It was a moment that stripped away the glossy perfection of celebrity life and reminded everyone watching that even the strongest hearts can break, and that love, at its purest, is tested when life takes a painful turn. The story began like any other day on set. The bright studio lights, the cheerful audience, the usual rhythm of a morning talk show. Kelly was there, with her husband by her side. But that morning, something was different. Those who knew her well noticed the subtle change, a heaviness behind her smile, a quiet intensity in her eyes. Then, as the segment went on, she reached for Mark's hand, looked at him for a moment, then turned toward the camera. Her voice trembled, but her courage didn't waver. She said simply and powerfully, "I've been told I have cancer." For a moment, time stood still. The audience gasped. The studio fell completely silent. Mark froze. His face, usually calm, confident, and controlled, changed instantly. You could see the weight of her words land like a blow. His eyes filled with tears. He whispered softly, "I can't believe you said that." Millions of people watching from their homes felt it. That sudden sinking feeling when reality crashes in. For Mark, it wasn't about television anymore. It wasn't about the show, the image, or the fame. In that moment, he wasn't an actor or a public figure. He was a husband, terrified of losing the woman he loved. That moment resonated deeply with so many viewers, because nearly everyone, at some point, has felt the world stop with one phone call, one test result, one sentence that changes everything. It's the moment when plans, dreams, and security all fade into uncertainty. For fans around the world, Kelly's words weren't just an announcement. They were a mirror, a reflection of their own fears, their own battles, their own moments of helplessness. Cancer. It's not just a word. It's a thief. It steals peace, trust, and time. And yet, in the middle of that darkness, what shone brightest that day wasn't fear, it was love. Because Mark's reaction, though heartbreaking, was not a sign of weakness. It was proof of something deeper, proof that vulnerability is strength. His tears, his shock, his silence, they reminded millions that love is real only when it hurts, when it fears, when it refuses to give up. Then, just as the weight of her words settled over everyone, Kelly spoke again. Her voice was steadier now, her eyes glistening with tears, but also courage. She told the world that her cancer had been caught early, that treatment had already begun, that she wasn't giving up. She was fighting. And she wasn't just fighting to survive, she was fighting to truly live. Turning to Mark, she took his hand and said quietly, "We'll get through this together." In that simple promise, everything changed. Her determination became his. Her courage lit the spark that transformed heartbreak into hope. For more than 25 years, Kelly and Mark had been through the highs and lows of fame, family, and success. But this challenge was different. Cancer doesn't care about fame or wealth. It doesn't care how many fans you have. It cuts life down to its simplest truths: love, fear, and strength. When the show cut to a commercial break, the studio was still silent. The audience didn't erupt in applause. Instead, they stood quietly, together, in respect. The cameras turned off, but the emotion lingered. Crew members who had worked beside Kelly for years were crying. No scripts, no rehearsals, just raw humanity. But the most powerful moment happened behind the scenes. In her dressing room, away from the crowd, Mark held Kelly in his arms. The man who had always been her strength finally let go. He wasn't comforting a co-host or a celebrity. He was holding his wife, his world. He whispered, "You're not alone, not even for a second. We're in this together." And in that private embrace, the story of fear became a story of unity. The world saw that vulnerability and love could coexist, that strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means breaking, then choosing to keep going. The video of that moment went viral. It wasn't celebrity gossip anymore. It became something bigger, a global conversation about courage, honesty, and the silent battles so many people face. Within hours, the hashtag #WeStandWithKelly began trending worldwide. But what made it truly powerful wasn't the fame. It was the flood of stories from ordinary people who saw themselves in her pain. A retired teacher wrote that her husband had held her hand through every round of chemotherapy. A young father shared a photo of his wife ringing the hospital bell, marking the end of her treatment. Messages poured in from around the world, from survivors, caretakers, and loved ones, all sharing their strength and support. Kelly's story had broken down the walls of perfect TV and replaced them with a bridge of understanding and compassion. Over the following weeks, Kelly and Mark adjusted to their new reality. Mark took a step back from his projects, choosing to focus entirely on Kelly. He became her shield, driving her to appointments, waiting with her in cold hospital rooms, telling her stories from their early days to make her laugh, protecting her from the constant noise of public life. What had once been a moment of helplessness turned into an act of unwavering devotion. His love became her anchor. And Kelly, ever the fighter, met every challenge with grace, humor, and resilience. She showed up, not just for the cameras, but for herself, her family, and the countless people who found strength in her story. Her message was simple, yet profound. Early detection saves lives. And life, no matter how unpredictable, is always worth fighting for. The couple continued to share glimpses of their journey, moments of quiet reflection, gratitude, and renewed purpose. And through it all, they reminded everyone that strength isn't about never falling. It's about choosing to stand up again and again, together. In a world obsessed with perfection, Kelly and Mark reminded us what's real: love that endures, courage that speaks softly but powerfully, hope that refuses to fade. Their story isn't just about two celebrities facing hardship. It's about every person who's ever had to hold someone's hand through pain and say, "We'll make it." So if this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it, not just to spread awareness, but to remind someone that they're not alone. If you or someone you love is going through a difficult time, let Kelly and Mark's story be a light, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, love can be the strongest medicine. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story about the people who inspire us the most. Together, we can share hope one story at a time.